The biggest thing that impacts me when I sit on the ground with them is we are just the same in a way. Like, our hearts need to be loved, to be cherished, to be listened to.
Welcome back to another episode of On the Ground with Samaritan's Purse, where we take you to the front lines and behind the scenes of our work around the world. I'm your host, Kristy Graham, and this week I want to highlight our women's projects. Every project of Samaritan's Purse impacts women in some way, from drilling a well to providing health care. But today, we want to introduce you to our protection programming. I recently talked with Monica Napier, who is the Global Protection Technical Advisor. She has the privilege of supporting Samaritan's Purse field offices and disaster responses in the effort to protect vulnerable women and girls from harm, exploitation, and abuse. She has passionately worked in this area for over 18 years, and she's witnessed countless lives transformed. She shared more with me about what protection programming means and why it matters.
The aim is overall to ensure that we're creating safer environments for those that we've been privileged to walk alongside, and also just to remind them that they are created in God's image and that we really want them to have their dignity upheld. So I support all of our field offices around the world. So my role is global, and I've had the deep privilege of just visiting a number of our field offices and working with the frontline staff as they are serving others on the field. And for me, it's just it's a deep passion of mine, this whole area, especially addressing violence against women and girls. And I just love being out in the field and just being able to see what we've been able to do in this area of work.
And so you mentioned, you specialize in protection programming. What exactly is it, and why is there a need within Samaritan's Purse?
So we've been doing it for a long time in general, because it's just interwoven into a lot of our programming. But over the years, it's become something that's been more overt, that we needed to target it more specifically. And sadly, because of the number of protracted crises around the world, and just the harm and exploitation that has been going on, especially to do with women and girls. And so basically, through our program of protection within Samaritan's Purse, what we're trying to do is to support people to build like a solid foundation so that they can have a safer environment, that they're free from harm, exploitation, and abuse. Because sadly, when disaster strikes, whether it's a natural disaster, man-made disaster, and poverty, lots of people are under unthinkable forms of violence and exploitation. And so as Samaritan's Purse, we've been able to come alongside loads of communities, individuals, families, and just show them the love of Christ by creating these safer communities, and also building it on the foundation of Christ. And so for me, within the whole protection sector, it's all about having Christ as that solid foundation at the bottom, and then building up communities around that, so that they can see that they're deeply loved and that they're cared for and respected for who they are as an individual.
I love what Monica shared. Not only are she and her teams helping women in tangible ways, but more importantly, spiritually, they're teaching and encouraging them to find their identity in Christ. Next, Monica talked about her most recent trip.
I've just come back from Niger, and we're just actually beginning to start a protection project there. And so one of there's 3 different activities that we're aiming to do within our program within Niger. And the first one is basically working with community leaders, and especially church leaders, for them to be able to support their community to address violence against women and girls. So this will be a lot of training through a biblically based curriculum, just sharing about that violence towards women and girls is not something that God wants, and that He views women and girls as equal and sees them and loves them just the same. And so we're working that with community leaders so that they can spread that message, and so that they can create safer environments for women and girls. And then another huge aspect of that program in Niger will take place in a internally displaced people's camp. And so we're hoping to start what we call a safe space for women and girls. And so these safe spaces are a specific, not building per se, but a place where women and girls can gather and feel emotionally and physically safe. And so we see it as a place that they can come, be nurtured and loved, and undertake whatever activities, whether it's doing some crafting, doing their local crafts from their own area. And then the staff there are just walking alongside them, supporting them with some of their trauma, and just being a safe space where they can come and chat and connect with each other. And then we're also sharing Bible stories about women in the Bible and different things like that.
And so Niger, I mean, you were just there. Can you take us down and maybe introduce us to someone that's been impacted by the work, and how did it make a difference in their life personally?
So when I was there, I was able to gather with a whole, like maybe 20 women, and we just talked to them about being a woman in Niger. And they were able to share with me some of the stuff that's been going on, that we've already been able to do with them. One of the huge things that was really impactful for the women is that they are part of almost like a soup kitchen, supporting each other. And they just found it, because they've been uprooted from where their homes were, they just found it so therapeutic to be able to serve and cook for their other families within the community. And so they're doing this on a rotating basis. And then at the same time, they've been able to share Bible stories from women in the Bible. And my colleague that I was there with just said it was just so beautiful to see what the women had taken away from these different Bible stories. And how even for us, you thought, oh, I'd never seen that story like that and in that light. And it was just very precious just to see that they were thinking, wow, I'm loved, I'm special. And so for me, that was really unique. And when I was there, I kind of felt I brought nothing to you. I've just come to talk to you, learn a bit more about what your needs are and how we can be better effective in our programming. And the ladies were saying to me, but Monica, you've brought something that we know that the topic that you just talked about is not taboo. We should be talking to our girls about this to keep them safer. And so when we go away, we will share more and talk about it with our girls. And so for me, I felt I didn't have much to bring, or what was I sharing? And it was heartwarming just to see that it had kind of clicked with them, that they needed to, talk about these issues in order to protect their young girls who are, affected by violence and exploitation.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Reading the Bible, hearing it through their eyes, I'm sure is different, depending on what region and where they live in the world. And speaking to that, I'm sure you learned so much from them. So what do you learn? I guess, what does the Lord teach you as you travel to all the different places from these women that have grown up so different from you?
The biggest thing that impacts me when I sit on the ground with them is we are just the same in a way. Like, our hearts need to be loved, to be cherished, to be listened to. That's something that's really struck me recently as I've traveled the globe, whether I've been in Colombia, Niger, the Democratic Republic of Congo. We're the same, and it's really precious. And it's just fun to talk with each other and just compare how we were, how we are as women, and joke about it as well. And I guess another thing that I've learned from them is just their resilience and strength, and they push forward so much.
I know, and that must be neat to, share the gospel, because you're right. We are image bearers. We were all created by God. There are differences and unique things that we can learn from everyone, but you're right. There's such a commonality. And I think the gospel also brings that down. We're the same, and we have something in us, that we are longing for, and that's Christ, because he created us. So I love that you can bring that good news to people. So when people usually think about protection programming, I think most people think about trafficking, and I know we do work within that as well. I think of our office in Cambodia. So many people have to, travel for work across the borders. So can you maybe even take us to some other regions and how protection, what do we do in that aspect of the ministry?
So another huge part of some of the work that we do is just raising awareness about safe migration and human trafficking. And so sadly, in many of the parts of the world that we're working in, it's a huge problem. And because of families having to cope, they get tricked, conned into trafficking. And so a lot of our programming is to make them aware of the tricks of the perpetrators of trafficking and putting safe tools and tips into their hands so that they know how to migrate safely. And so we do a lot of work supporting survivors of human trafficking and to reintegrate them back into their families when they have been trafficked, if they're able to come home. And people have said to me in the past, I said, yeah, it's life-saving information, or protection is life-saving. They look at me, how can it be life-saving? It's not medical or anything. But I said, the fact that you have broken down certain myths or put tools or questions for people to think beforehand, they can actually stop themselves from being trafficked. And we've had beautiful testimonies from the field where people have recalled some of the messaging that we've given to them, and their pathway in life totally changed because they recalled that and realized, I'm being trafficked, or it was a potential trafficking situation.
That's awesome. I know I can't even imagine, that having that knowledge and tools ahead of time. I think it's more of a proactive part of the ministry where you're right. They'll recall those things when they get into danger or sense things. But then also I love that we do a lot of reactive work, people that have, been victims. I love that there's also, a program to help them heal because, I'm sure it's lifelong, but at least having a community, having support to help navigate getting into new life again.
Yeah, it's a long process. And the beautiful thing about that is you come around families, and we've done a lot of livelihood support so that they have got some form of income, a livelihood where they can live and provide for their families, and rather than the family disintegrating and doing that, and just working on them and their trauma as well, and feeling that they can come back to the family. Sometimes there's a lot of shame because they failed. They never went and did what they thought they were going to do. So, and it's also then protecting. They become agents of change, protecting others and their own community members.
I'm just curious, Monica, because I love all aspects of the ministry, and I love all the people that God brings, and I see a joy and a sparkle. You love what you do. But I'm just curious, how did you know that you were called to do this, or how did God prepare you for this work? Because I know it's hard, it's difficult. You see really hard things and you see evil, and so it's hard to keep doing this for 18 years. So how did God, I guess, prepare you and call you to do this kind of work?
So I was brought up in numerous different countries. And so from a child, I was exposed to poverty from a very young age. And my parents were very open with us about the way other people lived. And I don't know, I think my mum was also involved in sort of protection work, or working with women on the streets and stuff like that when we lived in Thailand and in India. And so I think it was from a very early age. And for me, it was just the plight of women and just wondering why women were second-class citizens in so many cultures, when I was brought up knowing that I was cherished by God. And so I've always had that in there, that deep passion. And I'm very grateful for the childhood I had, and just wanting to share, bring justice, bring that dignity to others, and for women and girls to feel that full potential. And so for me, it's been there all along, and it's just been developing over time, and God has continued to fuel that passion. And there's so many problems, so many things, and sometimes it's a very dark area of work, but I think, I was able to walk along that one person today. You brought a smile, you brought a little bit of a message, showed them God's love, and that will make a difference and have a domino effect on other people and their communities ultimately. And so that's what brings me great joy in this work that I do.
I would love to know from you, how can we be praying for this aspect of the ministry, for protection programming? Like, how can people listening pray for the work that you're a part of?
I think the biggest thing is to pray for our frontline staff, those who are on the front line, who are every day listening to stories of really, really hard stories of exploitation, abuse that have gone on to people, and that God will just protect their hearts, give them discernment, how to walk alongside others. They're in it 24 hours of the day. I have so much respect for all my colleagues that I walk alongside and are able to support in the field, and just, that God would really protect their hearts and minds, and that they would be able to give their all in it, and for God to open more doors for us to be able to support this kind of work in some very difficult contexts. And I just think of all the program managers that are doing it day in, day out, and they say to me, Monica, I do this for free. I just love it so much. And so they're my real champions, like agents of change. And I just feel what a privilege it is as a technical advisor to walk alongside them, support them, mentor them, and just be there for them in some of their hard, dark days. I will admit sometimes I am very jealous that they're all the time there on the field with them. And for me, my happiest place was when I was in Niger, just sitting around on the floor in the sand, the dust with the women, the girls, and really just laughing and having fun. And a lot of our programs are like that as well. Like, again, thinking about DRC, when I was in the safe space, it was one of the women, we sat down on the floor with them and they were learning hairdressing, and it broke my heart really, because they said to them, I can't believe it, they're sitting with us on the floor, they're letting me touch your hair because we're dirty, we're like this. And I'm like, no, for me, we're the same, we're women together. And for me, it was, no, you've let me into your space to share what's been happening with you. And so I felt that was a real privilege to share their story. So it's a give and take with the activity. So even in so much darkness and knowing what these women have gone through and girls have gone through, there is so much light and happiness and joy that's created in these safe spaces.
And as you mentioned, the frontline staff, those that carry out the day-to-day grind, as you mentioned, I know sometimes I get envious too. I'm like, I wish I could go there and be there, but I know it's not easy and I know it's hard. But could you also maybe introduce us to a frontline staff?
So one frontline staff, I was driving with her in the car. We were coming back from visiting a safe space. There is a reintegration program for street children. So they're trying to reintegrate the street children with their families or a host family. That's it. We were driving back from church with her, and she just suddenly stopped the car, and a boy crossed the road, and it was one of her boys. She calls them one of my boys, she says. And she looked at him, and the joy on her face to see the street boy who had been reunited with his family. And so she called him over to the car, and they just started engaging, talking. And for my colleague, she said, Monica, that was my best day, just to hear from him, seeing that he's doing so well and how he'd been impacted by our project, where he'd been reintegrated back with his family because he'd run away for, various reasons. And there were tears coming down her eyes. And it was also for me, the tears from my eyes, because it was just the beauty to see her so happy. And for her, it was a success story.
I loved hearing Monica's heart about the work that she gets to be a part of. Though it's heavy, it's so rewarding to see lives transformed. Next, I want to introduce you to another frontline staff member, Hanna. She is the Protection Program Manager in the Samaritan's Purse Office of Democratic Republic of Congo. Hanna's team in the DRC targets women who have been displaced as a result of conflict. They're now living in camps, but Samaritan's Purse works to create a safe space for them to feel seen and loved. These women and children are in extremely vulnerable situations, but this safe space provides an environment for them to heal, to share about their trauma, to take part in vocational training, and of course, hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. Hanna said that at a young age, she felt the calling from the Lord to work in protection, and it gives her peace to come alongside these women.
I've also discovered one thing. that our hearts, despite whichever level we are at, our hearts are the same. It doesn't matter the level of your education, the level of your career, but there is a way that you can humble yourself and be able to connect with that woman that is down there.
Hanna told us the story of a woman who was living in an IDP camp. She has 7 children, and she had lost her husband in the war.
And then on reaching the IDP camp, she didn't know what to do. At that time, she had 7 children. She was young. I think she started giving birth when she was a very young girl. So at that time, she had 7 children, and she was expectant. So why she came, it's not because she had lost the husband. It's because she was pregnant with another man who was a husband to someone else, and she didn't know what to do.
It was a difficult and complex case, but our team surrounded her with Christ's love.
And I asked her, what would you want for your life? She said, I would want to be economically empowered.
Samaritan's Purse was able to help her find a way forward. Her dream was to be able to take care of her children and provide for their needs. And through our program, she learned vocational skills and was able to start her own small business. She even started mentoring other women in the group.
And then I saw her progressing from a very vulnerable woman to a woman who now became economically empowered because she was able to go through the vocational training. She even gave birth to her baby, and she continued, taking care of the baby and how she's able to make enough money to feed her family. And she has continued. Even today, I still see her at the camp every time I go to the safe space. And this is one case of so many other hundreds of women that have come through our program and whose lives have changed. And in addition to that, she also gave her life to Jesus. And that was the most important.
We thank God for this mom's new faith in Jesus Christ. Hanna said that before she became involved with Samaritan's Purse vocational program, she went to church, but she never had surrendered her life to Jesus Christ. And now she has found hope and purpose. Hanna also shared the story of another young girl who was physically disabled. She hid indoors because every time she went outside, she was mocked and made fun of her for her disability. And this young lady joined our Safe Spaces program in the DRC, and Hanna confessed that she was worried that she wouldn't be able to get anything from the classes.
I was also not sure if she was going to really master any skill. I was afraid.
But they kept loving on her and encouraging her, and slowly she started to come out of her shell. She began to socialize with the other girls, even participating in dancing and storytelling time.
Sometimes we usually have recreative activities, and she could be part of the dancing team, part of, storytelling. You could tell maybe by the facial expression and also her behavior that she's feeling comfortable about herself, that she has accepted herself, that she's, at a better place than when she came in. And the most shocking thing is that she was the best in the hairdressing class, and she was the best in braiding and also other small skills that we train them. She's gifted in her hands. Like whatever she touches, she's able to work at it very well. I don't know how, but God really did amazing. I was so impressed to see that someone like this can also can have her life transformed in ways that we didn't even expect. She has now her small salon, and she's able to make hair and earn money, earn a living. She's able not to move, freely in the community. I'm sure probably there are people who make fun of her, but I don't think it affects her as much as before. We thank God for using us as instruments. We are only stewards doing the work that the Lord wants us to do.
There are so many more stories to tell, so many more frontline workers that I would love to highlight. and women that have met Jesus firsthand through our protection programming. I wish we could tell you them all, but I hope that you've been able to see that through this programming, Samaritan's Purse is not only giving women the chance to start over, to learn a new livelihood, but more importantly, a newfound hope in the ultimate provider, Jesus Christ. Please pray for our protection programming taking place right now. Pray for the women that they would come to know Jesus Christ as their Savior. And as we close, I want to read Ephesians 3:14 through 19 and pray this over our staff and the women that they're serving in this protection programming. The scripture says, "For this reason I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide and how long and how high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God." Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for praying. I hope you have a great week.